Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to another live stream. Today we're going to be focusing on how insurance agents can close 10 insurance policies every single week. So the purpose of this training is to really give you the direction necessary to scale up your efforts. Because most likely if you're watching this, you're not already writing 10 policies or more a week, and you're looking for guidance on how to make that goal a reality. So let me give you a rundown of what we're exactly going to cover today. I'm going to kind of change it up a little bit and cover the objections, really, first of all, of why people would kind of be against this, why they would not want to write more business. I don't know. But some agents do have issues with this kind of idea as it's manifested in their head. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's going to kind of relate to the mindset side of this, because there's definitely a mindset alteration that you need to make as an agent to scale up your activity to then write more business. So we're going to spend some time talking about that. We're also going to talk about, of course, the modifications you've got to make to your system. No matter what kind of products you sell, you are going to have to change some aspects, not everything, surprisingly, in order to scale up to 10 or even more written policies every week. And then I'm going to give you some pro tips that I learned along the way, because in my heyday as a full-time agent, at the peak of my production, I was running 30 to 35 appointments every single week, sometimes more. So I know from firsthand experience exactly how this works. So my goal, hopefully, is to provide you some real-life perspective of little tricks to make that transition that much easier so that you can scale up production to 10 sales a week or more while minimizing the downside losses. A couple of things before we get started. First of all, I do have the ability for you to leave your questions in the comment box. So please, if you're live, put any questions you have about today's topic in there. I will get to it. Or if you've got questions about anything in particular about selling insurance, you're welcome to throw them in there. I probably won't get to those questions till I end this particular training, so be patient. Promise I'll get to it. Second of all, I do ask, I implore you, if you think this kind of content is share-worthy, consider hitting the like button. Not for my own personal gratification, but to help the YouTube algorithm share this content to agents who desperately need to hear it. This business is unfortunately lacking quality training. That's the only reason I've been successful, is because I try to give it as much as I can. So you hitting the share button, the subscribe button, helps a lot, especially the like button, sharing this video to people who may be just starting and don't know where to go and need some guidance. So thanks in advance for considering that. Okay, so common objections, again, kind of a silly way to talk about how to scale up to 10 applications every week or more. There are actually objections, and this kind of goes to the mindset issue that is so critical to correct the perspective that people have about what they're getting into. It's almost like the fear of success that you hear, like, what if this happens? What if that happens? That kind of thing. So we're going to go against, or we're going to start by talking about some of these objections that people have. So many of you on the call here today are from final expense, Medicare, mortgage protection, other lines of work where you depend on purchasing leads in order to facilitate your process in selling insurance. And so I'm going to be kind of talking to you more specifically. And one of the biggest things that people say to me that they object to this kind of scaled up strategy is that, number one, they are afraid of investing more money into leads. They're afraid. You mean I've got to invest $1,000, $1,500 a week, $2,000? That's so much money. How will I know that I'll get my money back? Now, on one level, I can understand the concern. It's risky, seemingly so, to put that much money down on the table to play the game, right? But here's some tokens of consolation to you. First of all, I'm a big believer in scaling up based off of evidence that some level of understanding, mastery, and success is already existent. I think it's a bad idea to start scaling up when you haven't seen evidence of success. So what does that mean? If you're brand new, you don't start off by writing 10 policies a week. Now, if you do, great. But I think it's better to start off with a smaller test sample, get into the flow of the business, and then after you're consistent, then aggressively start to scale up your lead flow, because scaling up your lead flow and then scaling up your activity as well is the best way to increase your total number of produced and closed applications every single week. So it stands to follow that the best way to do this is by scaling up your capability to generate leads. And what you will find, ladies and gentlemen, what you'll find is that it is easier to take that leap of faith when you've leapt a couple of times prior to that, right? Going from $0 to $2,000 when you have no evidence prior to that you're going to have any sort of success in this business is very difficult to grasp, okay? But it's not if you're going from 500 to 1,000, or from 1,000 to 1,500, or from 1,500 to 2,000, and so on and so forth, right? You probably have gotten to that point because you've had success with a number smaller than that, right? So, for example, there's a gentleman in the business, Ryan Lodi, worked with me a couple of years ago. Guy literally was flipping burgers before he started working with me. A couple of videos with him. If you want to watch it, it's got great videos. Any of you young guys out there that want to see a young person just crushing it, guys like early 20s making tremendous money, watch those videos. Ryan Lodi put it into YouTube. You watch it. He started with 10 leads a week. I think he only did 10 leads a week for like 6 months. And then got really motivated, scaled up to 20 or 30. I don't know exact numbers, but then went from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, then went from 50 to 75 to 100. And then at his peak level, he's doing 150 to 200 a week. And my point is that even for somebody successful as him, it took a gradual process, very slow in the beginning, but then quickly as he felt and saw what he could do and had the confidence to build that number up and up and up, okay? So moral of the story, I don't want you wasting your money either on investing in something that you haven't proven to already be successful. So the strategy here to scaling up is not by going that all in up front, but it's by making baby steps. It's starting with the minimum of what it takes to be full-time. And then once you see success, then what I do with my agents, I'm like, you're writing how much? Let's get you more leads. Let's get more, because more leads many times is the solution to making more money. But again, we do this by a gradual process based off of results, not just an all-out blind faith. Again, nothing wrong with a leap of faith. You're going to have to take it. But I believe in gradually increasing things as you show and prove to yourself that you can do it, okay? So, number 2 here, I'm so busy. How can I run any more appointments? A lot of people think, well, geez, how I'm running 3 appointments a day. That seems so small as you change your mind, as it seems. How can I run, if I'm running 4 days in the field and that's 12 appointments, how can I run 24 appointments? Well, certainly on some level, you're going to have to allow yourself to be more on the field, in the field, or on the phone, whatever you sell over the phone or face-to-face. You're going to have to run more appointments to scale up your lead flow, right? To facilitate that scale, okay? So the nice thing as to what you're going to discover, though, is that the busier you are, the more to the point and dialed in your presentations become. I started off in the business booking my appointments 2 hours apart in final expense. As I progressed in the business and started running more leads, that went to an hour and a half, then to an hour and 15. I didn't think I could go any sooner than that. Then I saw agents who were doing it in 45 minutes, booking appointments every 45 minutes, and I thought, I don't think that's possible, but let's suspend my disbelief and say, what if it was possible? What would I give up? And kind of the things we'll talk about here in a minute. There are things and aspects of your presentation that you can dial in, you can tighten up. And you really can, with most products out there, close people in a short period of time. You don't need 2 hours to close. And it's likely because you're not really running a lot of appointments that you think that you're really busy. But imagine if you doubled or even tripled your daily output in appointments run, and you shortened the length of time. How would you manage that process? And you will find that, again, sometimes the mother of invention is necessity, right? So when you have 9 appointments booked, you really find out really quickly how you can actually deal with it, and you find ways to make it work. So my point is, this whole like I'm too busy stuff is nonsense. Yeah, you're probably going to have to work a little bit more hours if you want to scale up your activity. But it's something that you don't have to necessarily go from 4 days to 8 days a week. Can't do that anyway, right? But there's ways that you can make your presentations tighter so that you're getting more to the point, getting more to the aspect of getting to the idea of whether the client's qualified or not, so to spend more time with them. Another objection that people say is, how about I just cross-sell and to make more sales per presentation as opposed to scaling up my leads? And I'm not against this strategy, but the problem with this anecdotally is that the vast majority of successful agents and new agents shouldn't be cross-selling. It's too complicated. It's too much going on. And the vast majority of agents, adding more complexity to a business that's already we're trying to simplify is not a good solution. It leads to overwhelm and frustration. And instead of cross-selling and getting more business, you actually end up with less business because your mind's all over the place. So I don't like that idea for new agents. Likewise, what I find with most experienced agents who are very well, many of them don't cross-sell at all. It's the craziest thing. One of the things that you realize going on convention is most agents who hit convention, which convention means they go on a trip, they've hit a certain production amount, so it's a good barometer of success, is a lot of them just do one thing really well. Even though we, in my agency, talk about on an intermediate level getting into cross-selling Medicare, a lot of our top producers, they don't want to sell final expense. It's crazy. They're writing 300, 400, 500 cases a year plus of Medicare, and they're trying to stay away from final expense because they're so dialed in to doing the one thing they do really well. So again, not against cross-selling. It's just that in my experience, talking to lots of agents for 10 plus years now, there's very few of them that to achieve that kind of production that they cross-sell. Many a times they do what we're describing here, which is buy more leads and run more appointments, which is really the crux of how to write 10 plus policies a week. Objection 4, I'll learn how to close at a higher percentage. So instead of thinking about buying more leads, running more appointments, some agents think, well, I'm going to take my, let's say you're running final expense. I'm going to take my 20 to 25% close rate, and somehow I'm going to get that to 35 or 40%. And what I'm saying is maybe they buy direct mail and they sit with half their presentations. Instead of closing half of them, they get 25%, they start to close more. And maybe there's some opportunity in increasing your numbers up to a certain degree. However, what I have found personally, as well as with other agents, at some level, after a period of time and training, your numbers are your numbers. Some people are very good. They'll convert more than 2/3 of their presentations. They're just fantastic in front of the prospect. They can do a great job. Some people close half of their presentations, okay? And again, I'm thinking on like a face-to-face basis here. And these I would consider good numbers. The problem is that it's very difficult to move the barometer or to move the measuring stick much higher than those averages. Yes, there's little things you can do, but in reality, it doesn't happen to the frequency that you'd think it would be possible. In other words, it's very, very difficult to go from 25% converting your direct mail leads to 30 or even 35% and do that consistently week in, week out. And what I believe and what I discovered was that the easier way to increase your overall profitability was not increasing or expending an amount of energy on trying to increase your conversion rates, once they're good enough, of course, but to instead just buy more leads and run more appointments. I saw people who, some people are just really good at closing, but some people are just okay. But I found it was very difficult for an intermediate to advanced agent to exceed measurably above their kind of baseline conversion rates every single week. And so that led me to the realization that really, at some point, when your numbers are good enough, they're good enough. And the one variable you can control and get an immediate output difference in the form of increased profitability is if your numbers are good enough and stay good enough, and you buy more leads and run more appointments, well, that's the solution to making more money. So for me, I gave up on the whole, I got to hit 30% conversion rates on direct mail a long, long time ago because it just didn't pan out. It just didn't work for me. I closed well. My business quality was good. It was all good enough. And that's all you need to scale higher. You don't need to be the best closer in the world. You just need numbers that work from a ratio standpoint to keep your return on investment in place, and then scale that to the moon, okay? And that, my friends, as I've discovered, is a lot easier than trying to figure out how to totally change your presentation to squeeze 5 percentage points more out of your conversion rate, okay? Let's see. Objection 5, I think, is what we're on now. What if I lose money when I scale up? Again, this is a fear people have of getting in the business. This kind of relates to the first point. The first point is when you scale up, you only should scale up based off of prior evidence of success, okay? The biggest leap of faith should be taken when you first start the business. We don't have any prior evidence of success, so there's this leap of faith element you're just going to have to accept in this business, right? And we kind of reduce the risk factors by training, the best leads, the best kind of support, the best carriers, right? But there's still that leap of faith. But once you start to get traction, once you start to get success, one of the things that I discovered, again, doing the same thing you guys are thinking about doing, scaling up super high. What I did at 10 appointments a week was the same kind of activity for the most part that I did at 35 plus. Nothing much really changed. 95% of my presentation was exactly the same. And therefore, taking that risk, that really wasn't a risk. It was just this fear mindset. Like I'm making that's a commitment issue. I'm making this big money commitment. What if I don't make it? Well, if anybody's going to make it, it's the person who's already successful. And once they recognize and accept that what you do at lower levels of investment is exactly the same as what you do at higher levels of investment, just more work, then how big of a risk is that really? How worried should you be about that? Now, I will say too, I believe this business is actually safer by running more appointments, okay? Now think about this. I think the risk factor is lower. This is based off of you having some experience and you're consistent in the business. I think there's a bigger risk in this business if you're scared and you're running 20 leads a week, direct mail, let's say. It doesn't matter, direct mail, any kind. You're running a lower quantity of leads. You only have so many appointments you're doing. You're not swinging the bat nearly as much as the person who's going triple down, all in, taking a ton of leads, running a ton of appointments. Now, do you think that that person's conversion ratio is going to be more likely to be hit running 10 appointments a week or running 30 or 40 appointments a week? Think about it. I contend the person who's running more appointments every week will have much more stability in their ability to manage their output, their production. They'll have less ups and downs. This whole like weekly flow that some of us get into, right, of having great weeks and then piss poor weeks kind of starts to level off. There begins to be some predictability out of the business at some point. And I find that happens for me, especially me personally, when I started running more appointments and buying more leads, okay? And plus, with the increase in volume, now you're buying more leads, but you should, if everything stays the same, and it usually does, you should have a higher return on your, well, not return on investment, but a higher net income. Even if you have an off week, there's still so much volume produced that even if your net income is lower after expenses, it still equates to what you would do at the lower volume. So you still have safety in numbers. Now, if your personal spending habits go up by 4 times, that's a little of a bit of a problem. Shouldn't do that. You should be pretty conservative anyway. That's a whole nother subject. But you get the point. If that stays the same and your investment increases and you have a bad week, it doesn't sting as much when you're just making enough to hit your personal income. Does that make sense? So for me, what I try to teach my agents is there is safety in numbers. You're going to be more consistent in production and income, running more appointments, and therefore buying more leads. So again, we talked about the objections first and foremost that go through people's minds when they think about scaling up. And of course, I've already told you, right? Like, what do you do to scale up to hit 10 plus policies written every week in the insurance business? You see more people, you buy more leads for most of us, and you run more appointments. That's like it. That's all you do, okay? It's not any more complicated. It isn't. Of course, and again, what happens, hopefully it's obvious why this works, because scaling up your activity doesn't change the nature of your business too much. It's just more of the same. And if the same and what you're doing right now is predictable, it's profitable, why wouldn't you want more of that? 3 times, 4 times as much, right? So it's that simple, but why is this complicated? Sometimes things in this business are so simple, they're complicated. It's because of all your head trash up here. Afraid to invest money, afraid of commitment, afraid of taking a chance on yourself, right? I find that that's the biggest impediment, and that's why I started with the objections, because if you can overcome that stuff, then I personally feel like your chances of really scaling up and making big money are that much higher, okay? So let's talk about some pro tips here before I hit some questions. Again, if you guys got some questions, thank you so much for hitting the like button. If you haven't already, please consider doing so. This shares this video with other people on YouTube, agents who need to hear this, that maybe they'll never hear it if they don't. So if you enjoy this content and think it's share worthy, please hit the like button. I really appreciate it. But let's talk about some pro tips and some hacks to deal with this added level of production that you would be doing. Because again, if we all agree here that my premise to hit more than 10 apps a week in production, you need to buy more leads and run more appointments. There are some things that are going to happen. You'll be very busy. You're going to have a lot more action going on. And there are maybe some things you can outsource or manage to reduce the stress and dial in your focus on running more appointments. So number one is consider outsourcing. There are certain elements of your business that you can absolutely source to another person to be responsible for, that you can free up your time and then run more appointments, which is your most profitable endeavor. So let me give you a couple of examples here. And I'll do this for face-to-face and telesales. So one of the most common things that I did immediately as a new agent, that some agents do at some point, is they outsource the appointment setting activity. So what does that mean? That means instead of you picking the phone up and dialing, you find somebody who's good enough to teach them the script, the objection rebuttals, the tonality, and you duplicate what you've learned into them to then make the phone calls and set the appointments for you, okay? This is a skill set that can be had at a reasonable price, but free up hours and hours, even days of your time during the week to, guess what? Run more appointments, okay? Because what makes you the money in this business is being in front of people who agree to an appointment, or being in front of people on the phone who are interested in life insurance, right? Or insurance. That's just what makes you money. You want to do more of that. That is your prime directive in the life as an insurance agent. So the more we can do of that, the more opportunity you have to make money. Make sense? So the point is, let's find somebody to outsource this to. And the good news is there's lots of opportunity to do this if you're a face-to-face agent. The best resource I can provide for you is Upwork.com. Upwork.com is a freelance website where you can find telemarketers who will be happy to call on fresh exclusive leads, assuming that's what you got, and it's probably what you're working if you're scaling up that high, to call those and set appointments so that you can go sell them insurance. And many of these people will just take a couple of $100s a week to set 30 to 40 preset appointments because it's good, consistent work. They don't care about commissions. They want consistency. And telemarketers love working warm leads as opposed to what they're used to, which is a bunch of cold nonsense. They don't want to work cold leads, so it's a big advantage to them. But what this little investment does, which you can make up with one extra sale a week, if not a half of an extra sale a week, is it frees up all that time that you would normally call and dial, the dial days as they're known. But now you've outsourced that so you can run more appointments. And it's very possible, if you're a diligent, hardworking person, to get an additional 15 to 25 appointments out of those days that you were otherwise calling for the investment of maybe at most one sale a week. Hopefully, if your close rates are good, and you should be good if you're scaling like this, that might be 12 more sales a week for you running that many appointments, okay? So the point is, it's a very good investment to make that you should absolutely consider as a face-to-face agent, especially when you scale up. One thing you can do if you're doing any kind of outbound telesales work, a lot of this, what about telesales? I glance at the chat, kind of getting that idea. Let me give you a suggestion. So one of my agents, I did an interview with Anthony Boba. You can go jump onto YouTube, put in a search for Anthony Boba, David Duford. You'll find it. Writes a good bit of business in the final expense arena. And he has created a system to where instead of having to do outbound work, he has a pre-qualifying system that uses texting, emails, follow-up sequences to basically pre-sell people into setting an appointment on Calendly to where he can call and then pitch them. Now, it's a bit unique as to what he does, and there's a little bit of moving parts to it. But out of all the people who book, he speaks with 15 of them, and they all have seen his texts, has seen his emails, they know what it's about, they're not confused, and he'll close about 2/3 of them. So what this has allowed him to do is optimize the time that he has, spending it with the best prospects out of the 100+ leads that he generates every single week. And this is something now with my friend in the business, Bobby. He will do a done-for-you system if you're interested in reaching out to him. Again, if you go look at, if you do research or YouTube search for $2.50 to Ford, you'll see one of the interviews I did with him. And he does a done-for-you solution for Facebook marketing to where you can implement this stuff. It's up there in price, but it's what essentially Anthony had done, and it's worth it. It gets your whole system set up so that you can kind of duplicate these same things. So this is what I would be looking at if I just felt like on the telesales side I was maxed out in the number of leads I was buying, and I was maxed out in the number of appointments that I was running for the days that I was making dials. So you got to take some steps to kind of get better quality out of the system, and this is where I think it makes sense to get to that, okay? You also can outsource admin work. And the nice thing about in a lot of lines of work, you don't really have a ton of admin work if you're in the life side of the business, but any that you do, you could pay somebody to do all the grunt work, the follow-up work. Again, Upwork.com, great resource. I have had a VA there for years to follow up with people. I don't really do any follow-up work anymore, never really did. Even when I was full-time in the field, makes life real simple. If you're in the Medicare space, you can absolutely find VAs that will do any call-ins where people have questions. You can have somebody do the callbacks and coordinate with those people. And you can hire good people either stateside or outsourced in the foreign countries that will take there are people that will take $5, $6, $7 an hour in the Philippines, for example, that will do a great job for your clients and be affordable for you. And you can outsource that work and, again, focus on the work that pays you the most, which is seeing people and selling insurance. So continuing on here, other things that you can do. I wanted to talk about, again, pro tips to making the ability, because some of you are thinking 30 to 40 appointments a week. That's a lot of appointments, right? Sure is. So what can we do to decrease your appointment time without having to reduce the capability to help people, right? Or to reduce your effectiveness, because we don't want to cut our noses off to spite our face, right? We want to make sure, for running a lot of appointments, we're still doing the best job to sell when we have the opportunity to sell, right? So a couple of things I'll mention here. Number one, probably the best thing that all of you can do that will reduce the length of your presentations is to reduce your rapport building time. Rapport building is one of those things that some people excessively do. When I say rapport building, of course, if you're new, that just means creating a connection with the prospect, trying to get their likability and trust intact with them, right? The question becomes, how much is enough rapport building? Well, as you do more appointments, you're not going to be able and want to spend 5 or 10 minutes talking to people on the phone or in person. So what invariably happens, and what I believe you can do, is once you've done this business long enough, you'll be able to create a very quick connection with people where you really don't need more than a minute of chat time, whether it's on the phone or in person. Again, rapport building is something that you should try for that a little bit to get the person relaxed. But the real value in a presentation occurs as you pre-qualify, ask really good open-ended questions, and really delve into the concerns and emotions of the client as to why they would want to buy insurance. So we want to spend more of our time there and less of our time talking about the fish on the wall or the golf clubs in the corner, right? So moral of the story, as you run 12 appointments a day, the first thing I would look at reducing is the amount of time that you talk aimlessly about things. Get to the point, build a little rapport, and jump into the presentation, phone in person or on the phone. Second thing I would recommend you do is really overemphasize heavily pre-qualifying immediately as you get into the call, okay? So we want to build rapport, we want to introduce ourselves, but we want to ask questions that measure the client's desirability for coverage and their need. And we want to do that within the first 10 minutes of the call, whether in person or over the phone. And if the client doesn't meet our criteria for buying, that is a suspect. That is somebody who has a low odds chance of buying. And when you're running a bunch of appointments, why would you spend a whole hour on somebody who has a low chance of buying When if you're good at pre-qualifying, you can figure out if they're a good fit or not within 10 minutes, okay? So the point is get good at pre-qualifying. Find a script like what we teach at the Ford Insurance Group that will help you figure out if a client is a buyer or not within 10 minutes or less. And that allows you to quickly end those presentations where it's probably not going to go anywhere because, like with us, they don't have need, they don't have desire, they don't have a proper health, they don't have a bank account, they don't have a budget they'll agree to with 100% confirmation. If any of those are a no, we're gone, we're out, we're peace, that's it. So if you're not doing something like that, you may be wasting a lot of time pitching people who are otherwise not good fits. So if you rearrange how you sell, and you focus on eliminating and getting to know quicker, then you can end the presentations faster, the low odds opportunities, and spend all the time in the world with those people who really want to buy. And it's that easy to run 40 plus appointments a week. And more importantly, 10 plus applications every single week. So, and I say 10 plus applications, but hopefully this is really the strategy to scale up to the level that you want. We would say the same if you're going from 10 to 5 or from 5 to 8. It's just you got to do more of what you already are doing, okay? And you've got to take that leap of faith. But I would say the leap of faith should be marginal compared to when you started. That was the biggest leap of faith. At this point now, when you're looking to scale to the moon, the secret everybody knows who've done this, it's the same stuff I've always been doing. It's just more of it, okay? So there's not really the same level of risk because if you're thinking of scaling up, you already are getting success. So it's not like you're doing anything new. You're just doing more of the same. So I'd advise you all out there, please consider doing this. This is really, in my opinion, especially with a lot of life insurance products, the way to make a substantial income selling life insurance. It's not trying to get to the high Uber levels of closing that are impossible for most human beings, but it's instead taking what you do and doing more of it. That simple, okay? So if you got questions about how this works, that's the time to put it in the chat. I'm going to hit up to, I'm going to see if anybody has any questions in the chat. So if you got any questions, throw them in the chat. I'll be happy to address them. Let's see what people have to say. You're welcome, Pete. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Raymond. How you doing? Appreciate it. Jess, hello. How you doing? Hey, Susie, Eric, Dale, thanks for being here. How you write 10 policies with live transfers? You do more live transfers, really. So I guess at the end of the day, Leah, is you take your numbers. Let's say you get 20 a week and you're writing 5 policies. I think that's a good goal. Not the best close rate, but not bad. Instead of 20, you do 40, right? You want to get to 10 from 5, you double your live transfers. That might mean you have to work more hours. That's normal. But I find that process, is more achievable than figuring out how to go from out of 20 closing 10. That is really hard. But it's not hard going from 20 leads to 40 leads, and thus also doubling your output in production from 5 to 10, okay? So don't overcomplicate it. It's not complicated. It's pretty simple. You just do more of what works. That's it. How is it possible to get 12 appointments per day? Great question. So more leads and the time available to do it. So let me give you I'll give you some insight to this because I think that's a pretty good question. So first of all, I started my days in the field face-to-face at 8 o'clock in the morning. I used to start at 9 or 10, but I was like, these old people, they get up early. They're used to getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning. They worked at a mill or a factory, and you get used to that. So I'm going to start asking if I could do 8 o'clock in the morning. And go figure, every single day, 4 out of 5 days a week, I'd get an 8 o'clock appointment. Perfect. And what happened was that opened up 2 extra spots to run appointments. And then I'd book, and I'd rather do that than book like a 9 o'clock appointment at night. You could do that too, but I wanted to get home at a decent time. I have a wife and kids. And I'd take that last appointment at like 7 or 7:30. So I'd start early. That allows me to cram more appointments in a day. The other thing that I would do is instead of booking appointments every hour and a half, I would book them every 45 minutes. And the way that I would book them, thank you so much for asking, this is a great question, is I would use the Cableman Approach. Y'all know what the Cableman Approach is? This is a must to do when you're booking appointments. Here's how the Cableman Approach works. Mrs. Jones, just to confirm, I'm going to be there at 8:45 tomorrow morning, but in case I get stuck in traffic or the last person I see is chatty, give me up till 9:45 to get there, okay? But otherwise, I'll see you at 8:45. Have a good day. Bye. So I've now given them an arrival window instead of an exact time. And what happens is that out of an 8:45 to 9:45 time horizon, it took so much stress off of A, running the appointments, and also B, the pushback that the client would give me. And you think, oh, well, people hate the Cableman approach. I'll be there between 9 and 5 tomorrow. Like, great, I got to take a day off of work just to get some cable going. Well, no, they hate that, and we're not doing that to them. But to give them an hour arrival time, people know if they know what to expect, they're usually accommodating. And that's not that's not too much to ask for. But what it does for us, it takes so much stress out. And what happens is sometimes your appointments are going to run longer than 45 minutes. You got a husband, wife, and you got to do a phone interview with both of them, and it's going to drag out for an hour and a half. You need that extra drive time to get there. And what would ironically happen with these appointments is I would book 15 in a day, and I would end up being done an hour or sometimes 2 hours earlier. Why? Because out of those 15, I know I'm not going to see all of them, okay? Some people just no-show you. They're like, oh, that dude's coming at 10. We better leave at 7 in the morning and not come back till 9 o'clock at night, right? So some people are just going to ghost you, and there's nothing you can do about that. That's baked into the cake. So out of those 15, I might see 12 or 11. And then out of those 11 or 12 for me, because I'm doing the pre-qualifying strategy that we talked about earlier, I'm quickly eliminating the low odds opportunities, getting up and leaving immediately after 10-15 minutes of talk time, and finding that I'm actually getting ahead sometimes, seeing the next prospect, right? So out of those 11 or 12, about half of those are probably going to be good opportunities that I should get most of those closed into a sale. And sometimes they're husband-wife combos, so there'll be a few more sales in the mix. But the point is I'm rapidly getting through the unqualified prospects as quickly as I can. I'm giving an hour-long arrival window to give me that extra time to facilitate a timely arrival so the client's not flipping out that I'm not exactly there at 8:45 or whatever. And I also figure that some of my clients just aren't going to be there because they're deadbeats and they do this stuff, right? So that's how you run that many. And pretty much everybody who does this will agree that's really how it's done. Hey, Mark. Let me see. One second. Let's just make sure, Jonathan. Does it cover anything else? Appointment setter. Again, just being 100% clear. Hire an appointment setter. Makes life a lot easier, booking 12 appointments. I know John Dean, a Medicare agent with me, wrote 525 Medicare plans in 2021. He did his own bookings for the most of the year. He was on the phone 2 or 3 days a week to book 35 appointments. So, that's about 12 a day. So it can be done like that. But again, he now has somebody setting his appointments. I'm sure I need to do a check-in with him. He's running more now than 35 a week. I think his goal this year is to write 1,000. But that's kind of what you need at some level, because you get to this point where you're just constantly grinding it out. And it's better just to pay somebody to get rid of that burden to then run more appointments, because that's where the money's at, right? And again, it's something that's easily outsourced. And of course, using high quality leads is the other thing. In this case, John uses direct mail leads for Medicare, but we've seen agents use digital leads too. So it's less of what kind of leads. It's just making sure the volume sufficient to get that many appointments is there. So in other words, we don't run 40 appointments a week buying 50 direct mail leads. We need more like 80 to 100 minimum. We don't run 40 appointments a week with 100 Facebook leads. No, you probably have to get like 150 plus these days. So you got to make sure that volume, it will accommodate the amount of activity that you're looking for too. Okay. All right. Hey, Mark, what was the automation outsource from your friend? You mentioned it, but missed. Yeah, it's Bobby V. Okay. So if you go to YouTube, put $2.50 DeFord into YouTube, you'll see an interview talking about cheap leads. Watch that, book a time to talk to Bobby. He has a done-for-you system where he'll set up the automation, he'll set up the Facebook marketing system for you. So all you have to do is just basically manage it, but not do all the grunt work setting up. That's where most people get frustrated in my experience with Facebook. Hey, Glad Vince, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Remember, all this stuff is recorded, so once this is done, just go watch the recording. It'll be available for your viewing pleasure. Hey, Rick, waiting for my license to come through. Would you recommend virtual or in-home for a starting agent? Vegas area if important. Okay, so here's my take on virtual versus in person. And I can only really give you the difference in final expense. So that's where I'm going to go with, because that's my forte. And that's true really anyway. At the end of the day, industry-wide, telesales without a Zoom or FaceTime is more difficult than it is face-to-face. Why? Because you eliminate this face-to-face interaction you're getting. You can see my body language. We're making eye contact in a sense, right? Like you have a better and deeper connection with somebody like this than if you were to strip this away and all you heard was a voice at a certain tonality. Okay, there's less to judge the person by as a prospect. Likewise for the agent too. And so what a good telesales agent has to do is develop their presence on the phone. They've got to have great tonality. They've got to have a fantastic script. They've got to perform their script in a much more exaggerated way than what you would do in person. And what I find industry-wide is the vast majority of agents are going to have to work harder to see similar success as they would in face-to-face. That doesn't mean there's less opportunity. I don't think telesales is worse than face-to-face. I think for the person that is developed to be good on the phone should do telesales. And that comes to my point. My point for Mr. Rick is at the end of the day, you need to examine yourself and decide, am I a person that's geared towards rocking it on the phone, or am I a traditional classic in-person agent? Where is my personality and strength lie? And my answer to you is follow where your gut leads you and go all in, okay? If you're undecided, if you're half pregnant, then just do face-to-face. Face-to-face works just as well as it always has, if not better. And no, COVID is not a big deal anymore. I don't think I've heard a COVID complaint from my agents in probably months, if not years. Years, and COVID's been here for 2 years. It's not a big deal. There are ways you can handle the pushback from COVID. Oh, I got a mask. Oh, I've got stretchy gloves. We can sit at a distance. I got it, whatever. We can sit in the car and I can talk to you there. People are living with this stuff, guys. Life is going on to a certain extent. And people, and it's kind of strange to think these are old people with health issues, right? Well, shouldn't they be concerned? Yeah, but they aren't. They're moving on, okay? So it's not an obstacle like it was maybe in the first couple of the months when it all began and everybody's confused and scared, okay? All right, how do I get cool ass Clay? Hey, man, nice to see you. How do I get new leads without paying for them? How can I have my cake and eat it too, right? Well, the only way you could do that is to self-generate them through like cold calling. The one thing I like to do is seminar marketing. So that's where you go and give a presentation in front of a group of people that would make good prospects, and you hopefully cultivate some leads that way. I teach agents how to do seminars in senior living facilities. You make a sale or two after every seminar. You do a couple of those a week. That's a great way to make sales without having to put some money down, okay? The only way I can think of is cold door knocking using flyers. There you go. And plus a little bit more. The seminar marketing really is better because it's not cold calling. That's a grind. Giving a speech, you're automatically assumed to be the authority because you've got the guts to get up there and speak in front of everybody, right? And people will come to you because you've expressed and exhibited yourself as the authority. So you've already built rapport with them. They like and trust you. So the sale is a lot easier if they're interested. So I find that if you stripped all the paid options away, I'd figure out how to give free seminars and give as many as I can. Bulletproof. Hey, what's up? LinkedIn cold outreach seems to be a place to get good leads. Don't sell right away. Give people some value when you connect. You can connect with specific industries or people you want to. Yeah. Sure. Not really our bag in the insurance business of final expense Medicare. Probably is with certain lines of business. So I can't say it's good or bad. We just don't really do that, at least with where my experience lies. But if you're getting results and it's somewhat scalable, which manual outreach definitely does work, especially if you can not just send a pitch. If you can cultivate that benefits with some content on your page, on your social media, you're actually giving away really good stuff. That's what works, It's as if I came out on YouTube and I was like, join DeFord Insurance Group because we're the best. I mean, come on, look at me. Look how awesome I'm in. Look at my fast car. Look at my money. Look at my stuff. maybe some morons would be attracted to that, but the vast majority of people are going to be like, this is stupid. I've seen this garbage before, right? So instead, what I do is I build value by giving like everything away about the business that I can, as far as skill set development and selling, and with no expectation of anything in return. And what I get out of it is a great source of qualified, awesome people that know and like me before I even talk to them. It's crazy. And you can duplicate that same thing too with social media, in whatever format you're doing. So it sounds like you're on the right track. So that's good to hear. Offshore appointment setters is no. Yes, they are. You're subject to the DNC. And what'll happen is if you hire an offshore call center and they call people who are on the do not call list, which you should never do. Don't ever do that. And then you follow up with that person. The ambulance chasers in this business will create a paper trail. They'll get your business card. They'll get your emails. They'll do things to create a paper trail digitally and for real, and then serve you papers to pay the TCPA violation. Okay, and you'll say, well, the call center is the one that developed it. They don't care. You paid for them. It's your problem, not theirs. So they won't get sued, but you will. And how do I know that? I've seen it multiple times last couple of years, people who don't listen to this. So don't ever call the DNC. It just isn't worth it. Don't do it. There's plenty of prospects out there. Better yet, don't cold call. Buy digital leads with opt-in parameters that allow you to call them. And any leads that you do, by the way, that request information, you are allowed to call them, even if they're not on the do not call list, because they specifically requested the information. So that's okay. I'm talking about straight up cold calls where they didn't request information. Don't call people who are on the DNC. Just don't do it. Do you have some tips on tried and true direct mail techniques for 2022? Okay, so it depends on what you're doing. And I'll tell you this. For final expense, what has always worked continues to work. Just a vague vanilla mailer that sounds like something maybe the government's doing, but maybe it's something different. I don't know. Let's send it in and see what happens. That captures people's interest who want to have coverage, but they're curious, right? It says enough to get them to send it back. So a blind mailer with no branding absolutely works. That works in mortgage protection, final expense, Medicare, like this. And there's nothing fantastical about this. This is just the old hat strategy that's always worked, and it still works really well. It depends on the line of work that you're doing. I don't know what you do. If you want to give me some more information, I can maybe point you in some ideas and directions. Great. Thank you. You're welcome, Mark. Judy. Hey, Judy. So that being said, virtual versus phone, would you call them and just set up a time to do a Zoom if they know what Zoom is? So, okay, this depends. It's market dependent. That is like me thinking of Mildred, the meme with the grandma with the glasses looking at the internet. She's like, like that's every final expense prospect. Okay. That's how you have to think. And some of them will try to convince you they're not another Mildred. They're a Mary. They're with it, And then when you try to get them to find the button to click the damn email signature, they can't do it. They pull their hair out and then they hang up and you lose a sale, right? So in all seriousness, I just don't trust my seniors enough with technology to be consistently using technology when it's required to make the sale. I would rather use old sources, but I know that my clients can complete like a verbal application process where they can verbally sign over the phone or just a strict telesales call. I don't want to risk losing a good opportunity because I'm insistent on pushing them to something that they probably half the time aren't going to be really cognizant of using. So that's for final expense. One day we'll be using Zoom for final expense. I hope it's sooner than later because Zoom takes a lot of this issue out of the equation. You get to see people. You get back to kind of like what you get in person. Not exactly the same, but closer to that than telesales. And I think the trust issues are much less because you can show people stuff. You can interact with them much more like you would in person. But we're just not quite there with final expense. Definitely there, mortgage protection, anything under 50 years old, I think it works for the vast majority of people. But I think the good news is we're rapidly moving in that direction because, like in town in Chattanooga, they stopped the newspaper distribution now. And now they're giving out iPads along with newspaper subscriptions. So they're forcing people who would normally get the newspaper to get an iPad now that maybe if they don't have it. So people are being brought into the 21st century finally. And I think eventually we'll be able to go that route and kind of change it up. Let's see. The link is broken, seminar marketing. You'll have to let me know what that means, which link you're talking about. Thank you. You're welcome. Cool. Hey, Lawrence. Agent Autopilot versus Bobby's Facebook program. Look at both. See what you like. Bobby's program, done for you. Facebook strategy. You just kind of follow the basics. That's kind of what I am most interested in. The Agent Autopilot. It's got some nice features. It's a CRM and a Facebook. I mean, they do a good job too. I think both are good. It just depends on how bad do you need the CRM, how much you like that versus just doing some other CRM plus, the Facebook marketing. Just do your due diligence. I'm like 50-50 either way. Do what you think is better for you. But that's only going to come through a little bit of research on your own. Hey, Samantha, I booked Zoom appointments and have really no other way to sell. Getting them to show up on Zoom and the next day or later that night is a hit or miss. Yeah, that's the other issue, right? I mean, like, this is what happens when you call and then say, hey, I'll see you on Zoom, right? And so I have an interview coming out here in a couple weeks with Frank Brennis at Symmetry, and they've got a system to where they're doing some pre-sale stuff, following up, automated text messages, emails to try to just entice the person, to remind them to show up, to sell them on why they should show up. And they claim it's kind of helped them at their show rates. So I think that kind of tech that kind of automation has to be in with the Zoom system, because what I'm always afraid of is it's different when you're in person and you show up and they forget. It's like, well, you're there. They don't have to pick you up on Zoom. They can just not open Zoom. They can just ignore your calls, right? So that is definitely a weakness in the system inherently with Zoom. Would you use something like FX quotes to share screen? The screen share? You can't screen share with FX quotes. It's just a quote, or I don't understand what you're saying, Don. You could show that to them, but again, the whole point I was demonstrating earlier is I don't even want or trust my older clients for final expense to operate Zoom effectively. Got to send constant confirmations and they still back out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's for sure. Your info on seminar marketing doesn't work. Check out daviddufour.com/store. If you're looking at buying the product, you'll have to kind of let me know what you mean by that. Like, the website should be working. There's a password. You should be able to access it. This is if you're an agent of mine. If it's not working, if you can shoot me an email, daviddufour.com/contact Steve, and I'll check it out. Appreciate it, though. Okay. So, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Again, to wrap this up, scaling is not that difficult. Once you know what you're doing, all scaling up to get 10 plus applications written weekly is just doing more of what already is working for you. Maybe outsourcing the appointment setting, maybe reducing the amount of chit chat that you do, but buying more leads and running more appointments and just scaling that to the moon is the solution. It's the simplest solution to writing more business, 10 apps and beyond every single week. I've done it personally. I've taught many agents to do it as well as they've advanced in their game, that have had significant success in their lives. And if you'd like to learn more about doing the same with yours truly, daviddufour.com/FAQ. That's my website where you can learn more about becoming an agent with me. Whether you're new or experienced, you want to sell final expense, Medicare, or annuities, we've got programs and arrangements to help you do that, face-to-face or over the phone too. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. Consider subscribing and hitting the like button if you happen to enjoy this training. And thanks so much for being here. We'll see you sometime next week. Y'all take care. Thank you.